wanted to share a little bit today as I am kind of starting this new venture of trying to produce content um, and beyond. I'll get to that here in a second, but that can be hopefully transformative and not just informational. Let me read to you something that a pastor friend of mine has said, and this is one of many. I think a great need for worship leaders would be training for how to shepherd and grow your team, building community. One of many. I may read some more here in a little bit. So, this is why I'm going to start to be more intentional with this channel. And so, as all the YouTubers say, if this is helpful in any way to you and you want to stay up to date, please like and subscribe because I'm going to be putting out more stuff. So let me tell you a little bit about myself in case maybe you stumbled across this and you're like, who is this bald guy with a beard? Here's a little bit about myself. My name is Curtis Biswell. I currently live in Kansas City, actually Overland Park, Kansas, which is a suburb of Kansas City. I've lived here since 2001, married to my wife, Valerie, of almost 18 years. I have three beautiful children. I'm blessed. Lorelai, Quincy, and Jameson. And so God called me. I'll give you the short story. Try to give you the short story. I'm a preacher. I'm a teacher, so I can talk quite a bit. But I remember specifically, I grew up singing all my life with my parents, and we did a lot of song evangelism, that sort of stuff. But I remember in college back in 2001, 2002, somewhere around in there, God really kind of bringing to me this call, this more specific call for a worship leading. He's like, okay, I've given you a voice, but I have more for you to do. And so I started to train, and I graduated in 2005 with an associate's degree in worship leadership. And I started leading at my first church in 2005. But let me fast forward. So, it's been almost 20 years now. I've been involved in a few different churches of various sizes, of various contexts, of various cultures, really, honestly. And I remember probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I had landed this job. Actually, it was 2014. God led us to a church where I was able to work full time in worship ministry. And that was something specifically that I felt like Him calling me to do. And so it's like there was a part of me is like, hey, I've arrived. The dream is now here. It's come to fruition. His calling of full time ministry is here. And I remember the first few years, just executing, building teams, pastoring my people, all that stuff that you're supposed to do. But I remember probably 4 or 5 years into it, again, Him kind of impressing on my heart, it's more than just leading songs and pastoring your people. It's more than that. I want you to invest more in people and start to develop worship leaders specifically. At that time, the church I was a part of, we had, I think, 3 campuses, getting ready to launch a 4th. And so at that time, there was this need for worship leaders, even in our context of campuses of under one umbrella of a church. And so I started, okay, God, what does that look like? How can I be more intentional with that? During that season, I started getting connected with local church planters in the Kansas City area, and like trying to serve them in any way I could, whether like, hey, you need help with your sound system, or you need suggestions on how to find a worship leader. And that's usually the big one, guys. If I'm being honest, still to this day, I was a part of a Zoom call last week, and it was a church planning network that's all over the country, but like these guys were specifically in Orlando area. And again, the worship leader that was on the call, that was the number one thing that he said in his context, in his area, was a big need, is how to find worship leaders. And so I think that was just one thing that I read to you a while ago of what church pastors are saying. Let me read one more thing before I kind of give you my why. One person said, I personally could have used some help. This was a worship leader specifically. I personally could have used some help keeping up with technology. But she goes to a larger church now where there's a lot of moving pieces, and so it's kind of teched out, as she put it. Here's another one from a pastor in relation to what they would love their worship leader or worship leaders in general to know. Do they have an awareness of the congregational worship language? And then do they have the humility and discernment to shepherd hearts upward? The list could go on. For the sake of time, I'm going to just stop reading right there. So my world kind of changed back in 2021. Got let go of the church I was a part of, and I felt like the platform that I had and some of the work that I had done to help develop worship leaders, it just started to change some with your context, right? And so all the more I couldn't shake this desire, this passion, and really this calling of, okay, really assessing, Curtis, what can I do? What are the relationships that God has given me? What are the gifts that he's given me? What has he taught me over the years? What is he wanting to teach me? Where have I failed? What could I have done better? What are the things that have worked? Excuse me, all of the above. And it's kind of landed me to where I am today, to where I really felt this strong vision. So I'm going to read to you just like kind of what my personal vision and my personal mission is. And I'm still reading it because I don't have it quite memorized. But my vision, so that's where I aspire to be, right? Where I'm going, where I have my feet pointed, is to cultivate a thriving community where worshipers are raised up in character, competence, and cognitive health, empowering local churches, colleges, and communities to flourish. And you may ask, like, why do you incorporate cognitive health? Okay, let's look at this really quick. One of my favorite verses, and really, honestly, around the time where I felt God started shifting me to be more than just a worship leader, more than just a worship pastor, but to be a discipler and a developer of worshipers, was he gave me Psalm 78:72, where it talks about David. He moves David, the Lord moved David from shepherding his sheep to shepherding God's people. And it specifically says this in that last verse of that chapter. He did that with integrity of heart and a skillful hand. So we know that. I think any organization, any position that you are in church or in the marketplace, like there's this balance, or at least there should be this balance of character and competency. What I like to say, heart and hands, okay, for another way of looking at it. But where I feel that potentially sometimes we shortchange it is we don't look at cognitive health and mental health and all that plays into things, right? And so that's where I felt strongly upon my heart, okay, it's character, it's competency, but it's also this cognitive health. And so if we're using the H words, I just said the heart and the hands, but we're going to also say it's the head. So it's the head, the heart, and the hands. I like alliteration. I like words that start with the same letter. Okay. Um, so that's the vision, is to cultivate a thriving community where worshipers are raised up in character, competence, and cognitive health, empowering local churches, colleges, and communities to flourish. So, how do I plan to get there? What's the mission? What's the vehicle? Well, this is what I feel like my mission statement is to create transformative content, provide coaching for worship leaders, and connect them to local churches in need, fostering vibrant worship communities that glorify God. So again, kind of alliteration there, but I'm going to be putting out content that I hope is transformative, not just informational. And then I want to be a resource and available to coach other worship leaders specifically, that are in need. And all in this is to foster a vibrant worship, to foster vibrant worship communities that glorify God. Oh, and the last C that I left out is to connect them to churches. So again, going back to what that worship leader said in Florida, like there's this need, and I see it here in Kansas City. Like I've been in contact with a few different church planners, and the number one thing it seems like they're asking or telling me is like, do you know of anybody that can lead? I'm looking to, and some of these are church planners that they're the pastor, and they're shouldering the weight of leading worship. That's just hard to do. And I realize I work at a church plant right now. Sometimes you wear multiple hats and you got to do multiple things, but it's identifying and finding people that have this heart to lead others. And so that's kind of the mission and the vision. One thing, I've been doing a lot of reflecting and a lot of learning about myself over the last few years. I've been taking all the tests, and so many times we can get bogged down in these personalities tests, the Enneagram, the spiritual gifts, the APES, the DISC, Strength Finders, Five Voices. That was a new one. I don't know if you've heard of that one. And then most recent for me has been the Six Working Geniuses. And honestly, that's been one of my favorite ones. It's from Patrick Lencioni and his team there at the Table Group. And I won't go through all of them. You can find out more about that. But one thing that I have really learned about myself, and kind of had an aha moment in, like, okay, that makes a lot of sense, and I just didn't have certain language for it. But one of the geniuses that he talks about is the genius of wonder. And this is kind of defined as the gift of pondering the possibility of greater potential and opportunities in a given situation. And that kind of, like, it just really resonated with me, and it made sense that was one of the ones that I tested high in. And so I've been doing a lot of that, a lot of wondering, a lot of thinking, a lot of like praying and seeking advice from others, and kind of just, what are people saying? What are people needing? How can I use what God has given me to further his kingdom through this vehicle, through this avenue of worship leaders specifically? And I would even go beyond that and say worshipers, and not to go down another rabbit trail, but like, we were all created in God's image to give him glory. And if you're a believer, if you profess the name of Jesus and you've surrendered your life to him, here's one thing that I do know is this: while we are on this earth, I like to say it this way, like, we treat our days on this earth as choir practice. Not only are we trying to make him famous, to make him known, to shine light in the dark places, and to help point people to Jesus, because Jesus is in the business of winning souls, right? Of gathering everybody that he can before he comes back, right? We know that, but we also know that we are eternal beings. Like this body is not eternal, but like we are eternal beings. And whether you believe in Jesus or not, like you will have eternity somewhere. And it's one of two places. It's like, will you be forever before the feet of Jesus, or will you be forever forsaken from him and separated from him? And if you're at the feet of Jesus, like the thing that we will be doing for eternity is worshiping, giving him glory, praising his name. And so that's why I view our time on this earth is not just to make him famous, but part of the ways that we make him famous is also by glorifying him, by worshiping him. And that's why I say worshipers, not just worship leaders. So I hope you stick with me. This is just kind of an introduction, and I have things that are going to be coming out, and I have people that I'm going to be interviewing. And eventually, the goal is, like I said in the mission statement, is not just producing content, but even in the avenue of producing content, they'll be primarily through this YouTube channel, just kind of giving talks and devotionals and things that practical tips and things of that nature that cover all three areas: character, competency, and cognitive health. So that will be one avenue of content, but another avenue to that I'll be letting you all know of, and if there's any interest, I know there's a need for it, is producing kind of like courses, online courses. Here's what I'm finding is a lot of the people that I have come in contact with, it typically are, like I said earlier, church planners or smaller churches, and that seems to be kind of the target audience that God has given me. And so with that, like we have to keep in mind that some of these churches have very limited resources. And maybe you're one of those churches. If you're watching this, you're a pastor of maybe even a couple hundred congregation. And even with that, like you have limited resources. And so um, I'm hoping to be able to create some helpful and beneficial online courses that we could keep at a modest price point, that maybe you're like, okay, I can't um, hire coaching or consulting, but I could buy this one time online course, and I think I could share this with my whole team and we could benefit from that. So there's just many avenues that I have in the works, that I feel really passionate about, is content through courses and videos and that sort of thing. But also, if you have a young worship leader, or even maybe there's an older person that's doing worship in your church, and they kind of got stuck with it because there was no one else to do it, and they have a heart and a passion for it, but they don't have all the skills for it, and they're learning. Like, I'm going to be offering some coaching as well, like if that's a benefit for some of you. So, anyways, all this was just an introduction, something I'm very passionate about, something that I see a need for. And so keep alert, and I will be putting out more stuff. But I just want to take this time to kind of share the why behind what I feel called to do in this season of life. So, God bless and have a good rest of your day.